You have exactly 30 seconds to get out of this office, she snapped, pointing a perfectly manicured finger toward the door like she had authority written in stone. Her tone was so sharp it could have sliced through metal. I hadn't even stepped 2 feet into the Lake Ranch HOA office when I was met with that attitude. No greeting. No curiosity. Just cold, entitled control. I blinked, slightly confused, still holding the manila folder I'd brought with me. "Excuse me?" I said, more politely than she deserved. She scoffed and placed her oversized sunglasses on the desk, looking at me like I was some pest off the street. "You heard me. This is a private space. HOA board members only. No appointments. No exceptions." She was mid-40s, perfectly styled hair, holding a Starbucks iced latte like it was a badge of power, and wearing an HOA access badge around her neck as if it gave her royal command over every inch of the lakefront. "Ma'am," I said, trying to keep my voice calm, "I'm not here randomly. I have business concerning this property. Here, please look at this." I extended the file toward her. She leaned back like I was offering her a dirty napkin. "I don't read unverified documents. And I don't deal with strangers barging in uninvited," she snapped. "We take safety very seriously around here. You need to leave right now before this becomes a situation." I blinked again, slower this time. She had no idea who I was. Not a clue. I wasn't some contractor or salesman. I wasn't trying to make a pitch or get a permit. I was the owner. The actual legal owner of this building and the land beneath it, including the HOA's office space, which they had been leasing from my company since I bought the entire Lake Ranch property 2 months ago. But she didn't give me a chance to say anything. "This is your final warning," she said. "Get out now, or I'm calling 911. "That won't be necessary," I replied, voice still steady. "I'm not a threat. I'm just trying to deliver some important documents." "He's refusing to leave," she suddenly shouted, already on her phone. "Yes, I'm at the Lake Ranch HOA office. There's a man here, he's acting aggressive, waving papers, claiming to own the building. No, he won't identify himself properly. I feel unsafe." I stared at her, stunned. This wasn't a misunderstanding anymore. This was a full-blown performance. I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't moved closer than 10 feet. And I hadn't so much as looked at her sideways. But here she was, dialing 911 and describing me like I was holding the place hostage. I could have argued. I could have pulled out my phone and recorded her. But I didn't. I knew how this game worked. I had nothing to prove, and everything to let play out. I took a seat on one of the leather chairs inside the office, yes, the ones my company provided, and waited. She hung up the call and turned to me with a smirk that practically screamed victory. "You're going to regret this," she hissed. "You think you can intimidate people with paperwork and a smug attitude? Not here. Not with me." I looked at her calmly. "I'm not trying to intimidate anyone. I'm trying to speak with whoever handles your lease agreement. This is literally just a formal courtesy visit." She didn't respond. Just kept pacing, muttering under her breath about entitled men and audacity. I watched her with detached interest, like a scientist observing a wild animal doing something curious. The truth was, I didn't even need to be here. I could have had my lawyer handle this. I could have sent an email or a notice. But I believed in doing things face to face. I believed in giving people the benefit of the doubt. I believed, until today, that maybe people like her just needed a respectful conversation to see reason. But I was wrong. Some people didn't want conversation. They wanted control. And she was about to lose all of it. A few minutes passed. The sound of approaching sirens started to echo through the air. She lit up like it was her birthday. Finally, she said under her breath, straightening her blouse and fluffing her hair like she was preparing for a magazine cover. Now we'll see who really belongs here. I didn't move. Didn't speak. Just waited. Because what she didn't know was that the officers coming to this scene, they'd dealt with me before. They'd seen my name on donation checks, partnership letters, and legal records. One of them had even personally thanked me when our company donated the emergency rescue trailer last fall. She didn't know that. All she saw was a man she thought didn't belong in her office. But it wasn't her office. It never had been. And that truth was about to come crashing down with the weight of flashing blue lights and reality. The police SUV pulled up just as she opened the office door like she was greeting royalty. "In here, officers," she waved dramatically, then turned to give me one final smirk. "Your little show's about to end." I stood up calmly, still holding the file, not a trace of worry on my face. I didn't even flinch when the two officers stepped inside. One of them, broad shoulders, dark sunglasses, serious face, looked around, eyes moving from her to me in one slow sweep. The second officer stayed a step behind, alert but clearly not tense. "What's the issue here, ma'am?" the lead officer asked. She jumped in before I could speak. "This man walked in uninvited. He's trespassing. He says he owns the building. I asked him to leave several times, but he refused. I'm in charge of this office, and I need him removed immediately." The officer turned to me now. "Sir, your name?" I handed him my ID and said simply, "Colton Hillman." He blinked. A beat passed. Then his entire posture changed. "Wait. You're Colton Hillman?" he asked, his voice shifting from formal to something warmer. I nodded. "Yes, sir." The other officer's eyebrows rose slightly. They both exchanged a look. Then, to Karen's complete horror, the lead officer stepped forward, extended his hand, and said, "Sir, it's a pleasure. I've heard your name before. Didn't you partner with Fire Chief Lawson for that flood relief project last month?" I nodded again, shaking his hand. "That's right. Our company managed the logistics." Karen's jaw dropped open. "Wait, what's going on? You know him?" she asked, her voice suddenly unsure. The second officer looked at her with a hint of irritation. "Ma'am, the man you just reported as a trespasser happens to be the legal owner of this building. He's not trespassing. He has full rights to be here." "What? No, that can't be. He's not on the HOA board. He's lying. He showed me some fake paper and started making demands," she stammered. I calmly opened the file again and handed over a copy of the deed. The officer read it, nodded, and then turned it so she could see. "This is a verified title deed. The Lake Ranch office is owned by Hillman Development LLC. That's his signature, notarized and filed with the county records office. It's public record." Karen stared at it like it was written in another language. But we've been using this building for years. This is the HOA's office." The second officer spoke up. "Actually, the HOA has been leasing this space. And your lease was set to expire this month." Her face turned pale. I could see the math working in her head, and the walls of her authority crashing down. I didn't know," she mumbled. "That's not possible. I'm in charge here. I manage the records. Nobody told me anything about an ownership transfer." I folded the file closed again and spoke gently, though firm. "I sent 2 formal letters. One to the HOA president. One to your management company. Both were signed for. I even requested an in-person meeting out of courtesy." "Well, nobody told me," she barked, as if that changed anything. "This is outrageous. You can't just show up and claim to be the owner." "But I am the owner," I said plainly. I came here to discuss the transition process and offer you the option to continue using the space, under new terms. But instead of a conversation, you chose to call 911. The officers didn't even need to say anything. Her actions had spoken for themselves. Ma'am, the lead officer said carefully, you made a false emergency report. That's a serious matter. Dispatch resources were sent out because you claimed someone was aggressive and threatening. She suddenly looked nervous. I didn't mean to exaggerate. I just felt unsafe. He looked so confident and pushy, like he didn't care what I said. That's not illegal, the second officer replied. And from what we see, he's remained respectful the entire time. You just didn't like what he had to say. She was quiet now, shrinking by the second. Her energy had completely shifted. Gone was the smug, controlling HOA queen. Now she looked more like a student caught lying in front of the principal. I turned to the officers and nodded. I appreciate your time, gentlemen. I think we can consider this resolved. I'll follow up with her management company directly. The lead officer nodded back. Of course, sir. And for what it's worth, if you need assistance during the transition, let us know. Some of the folks in this HOA can get a little tense when they're challenged. That's kind of you, I said, then turned toward Karen one last time. I came here to offer partnership. But the way you treated me, the false accusations, the drama, you made your position very clear. Wait, Mr. Hillman, maybe we got off on the wrong foot, she started, suddenly trying to soften her voice. I didn't know who you were. Maybe we can talk. I smiled faintly. I tried that. You had your chance. And with that, I walked out, this time, with the police holding the door open for me while she stood frozen, her illusion of control shattered in front of the very people she thought would remove me. I wasn't even halfway to my truck when I heard the office door swing open again. Wait. Please. Her voice wasn't the same anymore. Gone was the fire, the false power, what remained was panic, the sound of someone realizing they had just made the worst mistake in their career. I turned around slowly. She jogged up to me in her expensive shoes, papers flapping in one hand and her expression scrambled between apology and desperation. Mr. Hillman, she said, this time with a shaky smile, listen, I really didn't mean for things to go that way. I thought you were someone else. I nodded slowly, not angry, just watching her try to glue the pieces back together. I understand. It happens. She kept talking, stumbling through excuses. I get a lot of random people walking in here. The HOA has strict rules, and we've had safety concerns lately. So I just reacted. I was only trying to protect the office. I wasn't trying to disrespect you. That part made me pause. Because from the moment I walked in, all she had done was disrespect me, without knowing anything about me, without listening, without even reading what I handed her. But I stayed calm. I wasn't offended by your reaction, I said. I was surprised by how quickly you were willing to lie to the police. That's serious. She froze at that, her eyes wide. It wasn't a lie, she protested. I thought, you said I was aggressive, I interrupted. You said I waved papers and wouldn't identify myself. That was false. You said you feared for your safety. Also false. You know what the outcome could have been if the wrong officer responded to that call? She didn't answer. She didn't have to. We both knew how ugly it could have gotten. I panicked, she said finally. I didn't think they'd actually come so fast. They came because you gave them a reason to, I replied. You abused the system. She took a deep breath, clutching the folder she now wanted to look at. Mr. Hillman, we really don't want to lose this space. The HOA relies on it for everything, filings, meetings, member complaints, event planning. If we're forced to move, we'll be shut down for weeks. Can't we work something out? There it was. The shift. She had gone from enemy to negotiator in 5 minutes flat. Typical. People like her were always brave until consequences arrived. Now, suddenly, she remembered how to smile. I looked at the folder in her hands. "You're finally ready to read it?" I asked. She nodded quickly. "Yes, of course." I didn't realize how official it was before. I assumed it was junk mail. "It's a lease renewal offer," I said. "One that was sent a month ago. It outlines new terms, new rates, and conditions. Nothing unfair. Just reflective of market value. And a few accountability clauses added in." She flipped through the pages, pretending to understand every line. This rent increase is double what we were paying before," she muttered. "Correct," I said. "Because the previous rate was absurdly low, thanks to a backdoor deal your predecessor arranged. And I'm not in the business of losing money on sweetheart contracts." "But the HOA is non-profit," she argued. "We don't have that kind of budget." "That's not my concern," I said calmly. "You can apply for grants, raise dues, or cut unnecessary events. But you don't get to have prime lakefront office space for pennies while behaving like you run the town." She blinked, stunned at the honesty. "So you're really not going to reduce it?" "I could have ended your lease today," I replied. "But I didn't. I gave you a renewal option. That is the reduction. I'm still offering grace, despite how this meeting started." Her face twisted in thought. She was calculating again. Measuring how much she could beg, barter, or manipulate. "And if we say no to the lease?" she asked. "Then I start renovations on August 1st, I said. "This building will be converted into co-working suites. You'll need to vacate by the 28th of this month." She looked like I had punched the air out of her lungs. "You're really serious," she said softly. "Dead serious," I said. "I've already got contractors on standby. But I came in person to give you one more chance, to partner, not evict. That door is still open." "Barely." She stood in silence, arms limp by her side, looking at the paperwork like it was a termination letter. Finally, she nodded. "Can I have a day to review this with the board?" "Of course," I said. "You've got until tomorrow at noon." And then I turned to leave again. But she called out one last time. "Mr. Hillman?" I stopped. "Yes?" "I'm sorry. About earlier. I wasn't just rude. I was wrong. I let my title get to my head." I gave her a long look and replied, "You didn't let your title get to your head. You let it replace your humanity." Her face turned red with shame. "I'll fix this," she whispered. "I'll talk to them." "Then let's hope the board listens better than you did," I said. I got in my truck, started the engine, and drove away, not because I needed to prove anything, but because I had already won the moment the police called me, "Sir," and she realized I wasn't some stranger off the street. I was the man she had no choice but to negotiate with now. The next day arrived faster than I expected, and right at 11:58 a.m., I got the email. The subject line was simple: Lease Renewal Decision, Lake Ranch HOA. I opened it without rushing. My assistant had already forwarded 3 messages that morning from board members trying to clarify the misunderstanding from yesterday. Some even apologized outright. But none of that really mattered unless they signed the documents. The email read, "Dear Mr. Hillman, on behalf of the Lake Ranch HOA Board, we would like to formally apologize for the events that transpired yesterday at our office. We acknowledge our representative acted outside the professional standards expected in our community. After a full review of the new lease agreement and our available options, we have voted to accept the terms outlined in your renewal offer. We look forward to maintaining a respectful working relationship with you going forward. Sincerely, Lake Ranch HOA Board. I smiled faintly. No excuses. No fake drama. Just acceptance. That was a rare thing from groups like theirs. I replied with a simple, received and acknowledged. Lease execution will proceed this week. It should have ended there, but of course, it didn't. Around 3 p.m., my phone rang again. It was the same 911 chief who'd walked into the HOA office yesterday. "Mr. Hillman, hope I'm not disturbing you," he said casually. "Not at all," I replied. "What's going on?" He chuckled. "Just got word from one of my guys. That HOA lady, the one who called the false report on you, she tried filing a harassment complaint today. Against you." I raised an eyebrow, unsure if he was joking. "Seriously?" "Dead serious. Came in all worked up, said she felt coerced into signing something. We reviewed the footage, the call, and your record, nothing matches what she claimed. So we told her flat out, her report was rejected and could qualify as a misuse of emergency services." I let out a low laugh. "Sounds about right." "Honestly," he continued, "she's lucky you didn't press charges. Most folks would have filed something after a 911 call like that." "I didn't need to," I said. "She already embarrassed herself in front of the one person whose opinion mattered, me." He laughed at that. "Well, it's over now. Just wanted to make sure you knew she tried one more swing." "Appreciate the heads up," I said. "Always good to stay informed." We hung up, and I sat back in my office chair. This whole thing had started as a routine lease renewal, and ended with a 911 call, a failed smear attempt, and the complete unmasking of someone who thought a name tag and a title made her untouchable. But the thing is, people like that always overplay their hand. They believe the rules don't apply to them until the world shows them otherwise. And for her, that moment came the second the officer looked at me and said, "Boss." Not "sir." Not "this gentleman." But "boss." That one word cracked the illusion she was living in. It reminded her that authority isn't about how loud you talk, it's about what you've actually earned. And I had earned this. The building, the land, the respect. She just played dress-up in someone else's sandbox. 2 days later, my team went to the HOA office to begin interior inspection for future renovation plans. Even though they signed the lease, I still wanted to future-proof the space. And guess who had suddenly resigned from her position, according to the note taped on the door? Her. Apparently, the board had forced her out quietly to save face. No press. No Facebook drama. Just a handwritten sign saying, "Due to personal reasons, I will no longer be serving as HOA office manager. Thank you for the opportunity." No mention of what really happened. No explanation. Just a vanishing act. Typical. My team walked in to find the place tidied up more than usual. No iced coffee cups. No sunglasses on the desk. No perfume scent hanging in the air. Just silence. Just space. Real space I now fully controlled. That moment, standing inside what used to be her little throne room, I finally allowed myself to take it all in. Not with arrogance. Not with revenge. But with peace. Because I didn't fight back with anger. I didn't call the news. I didn't argue on the sidewalk. I just let the truth sit quietly until it had nowhere else to go but center stage. And it did. Like it always does. So now, whenever I drive by that office and see the Lake Ranch HOA logo on the glass window, I smile. Because I know what they don't, that everything they operate runs on a lease I control. That their future, no matter how loud they act, is still written in paperwork that carries my name. And that Karen, wherever she ended up, will think twice before raising her voice or calling the police on someone who looks like they don't belong. Because next time, that person might not be me. And they might not be so patient. But this time, I was. And I walked away with my dignity, my property, and the best kind of victory, the quiet kind.